The rain hit the cracked pavement like cold needles, stinging Isabella's skin as she stumbled through the narrow alley. Heart pounding, breath ragged, she could hear footsteps behind her, sharp, heavy, relentless. She turned a corner sharply, pressing herself against the cold brick wall, eyes searching desperately for escape. The city's neon glow flickered above, casting fractured light on her trembling hands. Then, suddenly, he was there. Cain. His presence filled the alley like a shadow made of steel, cold, unyielding, dangerous. The mercenary's dark eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that stopped her breath. "No running this time," Cain said, voice low and rough like gravel. Her lips parted, fear and defiance warring inside her. Then, in one reckless moment, she did the unthinkable. She kissed him. The world seemed to freeze. The cold edge of his jaw softened. His eyes widened, surprised, almost vulnerable. But before either could breathe, a gunshot cracked through the night. Isabella pulled back, eyes wide, and ran, vanishing into the shadows, leaving Cain standing alone in the rain, haunted by the memory of a kiss he never expected, and the woman who disappeared from his life. Chapter 1. Cain woke to the sound of rain on metal. It was the same sound that had followed him for years. He rolled out of bed, muscles tight, mind already on the day's list. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The city breathed far below, lights like fireflies. He moved through the rooms like a shadow. He lived like that now, careful, closed, alone. He kept his life small. Work, training, one good scarf he never took off. He ate in the dark so no one would see him fumble with a fork. He slept in armor half the time because sleep without it felt wrong. People called him cold. They said he wanted nothing. They were wrong and right both. But sometimes at night, a memory came. A wet alley. A woman's mouth on his. A kiss that should not have been allowed. Her name was a soft thing he never said. Isabella. The sound of it cut through him like warm light through ice. He tried to lock that memory away. He failed. Cain had a job to do today. A meeting. A target check. He dressed fast. The suit was dark and fit like a second skin. He looked in the mirror, saw the lines history had carved across his face. He didn't like the man in the glass. He didn't know how to be anything else. At the compound, men waited by maps and screens. They were sharp-eyed and loyal. Cain moved through them, voice low but steady. He listened. He gave orders. Then a file slid across his desk. "New intel," Jace said. Jace moved like a dog smells trouble. Quick, precise. He laid the paper down. A face. A name. It was a face Cain knew too well. He thought he had erased it. He had failed. The photo was grainy. It showed a woman with dark hair, a coat, a tired smile. At first he only saw the outline of her jaw. Then his chest tightened. Her eyes. The same eyes that had looked both scared and daring in the alley had turned up in a new life. She was older now, maybe 3 years. She had an air that meant she had worked hard for small kindnesses. He read the name below the photo. Isabella Marquez. "Target?" he asked, though the word felt wrong. "Victim," Jace said. "Someone is trying to silence her. Local group thinks it's revenge. Could be wrong. Could be big." Cain's hands curled into fists. He read the note again. She worked at the center. She helped people pick up the pieces. She listened to broken voices. She made a life of helping others, and now someone wanted to break her. He rubbed his thumb over the corner of the paper. The kiss, the gunshot, the vanishing. He had not forgotten the taste of her lips. He had not forgiven himself for letting her go. "Where is she now?" he asked. The fuel of duty mixed with something more dangerous. He asked because he needed the file to say she was safe. He needed the file to say she was not alone. He needed the file to be a lie he could believe. "She runs a shelter on Marlowe," Jace answered. "Small place, back rooms, battered doors, looks harmless, looks like a storm waiting." Cain stood. The room seemed to narrow, the air pressing at his throat. For a long time, he was still. Then he moved. He was a man with a plan. He was the coldest and most dangerous man they whispered about. He was the same man who had been stunned by a kiss and left behind a woman who trusted him for a single reckless second. He took the file. He tucked it into his jacket. He did not say he would protect her because words were weak. He didn't promise. Instead, he swallowed and left the compound. Rain hit his face as he stepped outside. The city smelled of wet stone and neon. He walked toward the car, breath white in the cool air. He pictured her in the shelter, hands folded, voice soft, like a beacon. He pictured her scared again. He pictured the gunshot that had split the night years ago. He pictured how he had let her run. He started the engine, he drove. And he did not know then that a second kiss would come, or that this time, he would not let her go. Chapter 2. The neon sign flickered outside the worn brick building, casting an uneven glow over the cracked sidewalk. Inside, Isabella wiped down the counter, her fingers trembling slightly. The shelter was quiet tonight, but the silence pressed on her like a weight. She glanced at the small photo taped above the reception desk, a picture of her and a little girl smiling under the sun. It was the reminder she needed, to keep going, to keep fighting. Her phone buzzed sharply, pulling her from the moment. She picked it up with a sigh. A message from an unknown number. "You're not as safe as you think." Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Footsteps echoed in the hall behind her. She spun around, but no one was there, just the empty corridor and the flickering light. Isabella forced herself to breathe steadily. She'd learned to live with fear, but this was different. Someone was watching. Waiting. She grabbed her coat and headed for the back exit. The rain had stopped, but the night air was cold and sharp. Outside, shadows shifted near the alley. Her pulse quickened. She tucked her chin down and moved quickly. A voice cut through the silence, low, controlled, but with an edge of steel. "You shouldn't be here alone." Isabella froze. Then he stepped forward. Cain, the coldest, most dangerous man she'd ever known. His dark eyes studied her, unreadable and intense. "Cain," she whispered, surprise and something else, old hurt, flashing across her face. "I'm here to protect you," he said simply. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't need protecting." He shook his head. "You do. More than you realize." Isabella wanted to argue, but the truth burned in her chest. "Why now?" she asked, voice barely steady. "After all this time? Why show up like this?" Cain looked away, jaw clenched. "Because you're in danger. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. About what I lost." Her throat tightened. "You don't get to say that." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quietly. "Just a chance to make things right." The tension between them was thick, electric. Years of silence, pain, and longing hung in the air. Suddenly, a sharp noise cut through the night. Footsteps running fast. Cain's eyes snapped to the darkness. "Move!" he barked, pulling Isabella behind him. A figure burst from the shadows, lunging toward them. Cain caught the attacker's arm with brutal strength, twisting it until the man dropped a small gun. Isabella's heart pounded in her ears. Cain's gaze met hers, fierce and protective. "We need to get out of here," he said. She nodded, trembling. As they disappeared into the night, the rain began again, washing the city, but not the past they both carried. Chapter 3. The car's engine hummed softly as Cain navigated the slick streets, the rain creating a steady rhythm against the windshield. Isabella sat beside him, her fingers curled tightly in her lap, eyes flicking nervously between the darkened city and the man driving. Neither spoke. The silence was thick, heavy with questions neither dared voice yet. Finally, Cain broke the quiet. "You should have told me sooner." His voice was low but edged with frustration. "That someone was after you." Isabella's jaw tightened. I didn't want to drag you back into this. He glanced sideways, the faintest flicker of pain crossing his eyes. You already did. When you kissed me. When you disappeared. Her breath caught, memories crashing in. The reckless moment in the alley, the taste of his lips, the gunshot, then running away, leaving him frozen and alone. I was scared, she admitted softly. Scared of what we were. Scared of losing you again. Cain's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. You didn't lose me. I lost you. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. You were cold, distant. I thought. You didn't care. A flicker of vulnerability crossed his face. I did care, but I didn't know how to show it. Not then. The car turned onto a quieter street, and Cain pulled into the underground parking garage of a nondescript building. This will have to be our base for now, he said. Safe, secure, but it's not home. Isabella studied him, the hard edges, the guarded gaze, and the tiny cracks beneath the surface. Why are you helping me? She asked. After everything? He looked away, jaw tight. Because you're the only person who ever saw through the cold. Because I don't want to lose you again. And maybe... He hesitated, voice rougher. Because I'm tired of being alone. Her heart thudded painfully. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him, but the scars ran deep. They entered the building silently. The elevator carried them down to a basement filled with dim lights, maps pinned to the walls, and men moving with quiet purpose. Cain's second-in-command, Jace, nodded sharply. She's safe here, but the threat's real. We need to be ready. Isabella swallowed hard, the weight of danger pressing down. Cain caught her eye. You're not alone anymore. She forced a small, uncertain smile. We'll see. As the elevator doors slid shut behind them, neither could shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, of danger, of trust, and of a love that refused to die. Chapter 4. The safe house was nothing like the sterile luxury Cain usually surrounded himself with. It was rough around the edges, bare concrete walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and a faint smell of damp. But it was secure, and for now that was all that mattered. Isabella stepped inside, clutching her coat tighter around her. The cold seemed to seep through her skin, settling deep in her bones. She glanced around the room, noting the sparse furniture, a worn sofa, a small kitchen corner, and a table cluttered with maps and papers. Cain followed silently, shutting the door behind them with a definitive click. His gaze swept over her, unreadable. This is where you'll stay, he said quietly. Until this is over. She bit her lip, struggling to keep the rising tide of emotions at bay. I don't want to be a burden. Cain's eyes darkened. You're not a burden. Not to me. She stared at him, searching for any sign of the man she remembered, beneath the cold exterior, beneath the dangerous reputation. Hours passed in uneasy silence, broken only by the soft hum of the city beyond the thick walls. Isabella found herself stealing glances at Cain, the way his jaw clenched when he was tense, the slight furrow in his brow when he was deep in thought. Finally, unable to hold back, she spoke. Why did you come back for me, after all these years? Cain's gaze met hers, raw and honest. Because you're the only person who ever made me feel anything. That kiss. It broke something inside me. I never forgot. Her breath hitched. The vulnerability in his voice was new, unexpected. But I ran, she whispered. I was scared. I thought I was protecting you. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. You protected yourself. I get that now. The room seemed to shrink around them, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. Suddenly, the sound of distant sirens shattered the fragile moment. Cain's expression hardened instantly. We don't have much time, he said, grabbing her hand. You need to trust me. Isabella nodded, heart pounding. As they prepared to move to a safer location, She realized that despite the danger, despite the past, being near Cain stirred something deep inside her, a fierce hope she thought she'd lost forever. Chapter 5. The night air was heavy, thick with the scent of rain and something else, danger lurking just beyond the shadows. Cain led Isabella through winding back alleys and silent streets, the city a maze of secrets they navigated with practiced ease. Isabella's heart pounded in her chest, but it wasn't just fear. It was the raw, electric pull she felt every time Cain was near, the dangerous edge that made her skin tingle. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cain glanced at her, eyes sharp but softened with something unreadable. "Somewhere safer. Somewhere I can keep you out of reach." They stopped at a nondescript door tucked between two shuttered storefronts. Cain knocked in a precise rhythm, and the door creaked open to reveal a dimly lit room filled with maps, weapons, and men whose eyes flicked up in recognition. "This is my world," Cain said quietly, stepping inside. "It's not safe, but it's real." Isabella swallowed, feeling the weight of the danger she'd stepped into. But beneath the fear was a flicker of trust, because Cain was here, and that meant something. They moved to a corner where a battered couch waited. Cain sat down heavily, and she followed, her fingers brushing his for the briefest second. The contact sent a jolt through her, both comfort and confusion. "I never stopped thinking about you," Cain said, breaking the silence. "Even when I told myself to forget." Isabella looked down, fighting the flood of memories. "I thought you hated me, that you never cared." His laugh was bitter but genuine. Hate would have been easier. The room felt smaller, charged with unspoken emotions. Cain's gaze held hers, searching, vulnerable. Then, without warning, the sound of glass shattering shattered the fragile peace. Men shouted, footsteps storming the room. Cain was on his feet instantly, pulling Isabella behind a steel pillar. "Get down," he commanded, his voice low but fierce. Bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off walls and sending shards of glass flying. Isabella's breath hitched, heart hammering in terror and adrenaline. Cain shielded her with his body, his presence a fortress of strength and protection. The attackers were relentless, but Cain's team fought back with equal ferocity. Amid the chaos, Cain's hand found Isabella's, gripping it tightly, an unspoken promise that he wouldn't let anything happen to her. When the last shot echoed and silence fell, Cain slowly released her hand and wiped sweat from his brow. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice rough but gentle. Isabella nodded, still trembling. "Thanks to you." He studied her face, eyes softening. "You're not just someone I protect. You're the reason I want to keep fighting." Her breath caught. In that moment, with danger still lurking and the city's heartbeat echoing around them, something shifted. Walls crumbled and hope blossomed. She looked up at him, seeing not just the mercenary but the man beneath, the man who had never stopped wanting her. And for the first time in a long time, Isabella allowed herself to believe in the possibility of forever. Chapter 6. The morning light crept through the thin curtains, casting soft shadows on the rough walls of the safe house. Isabella woke to the hum of quiet voices in the next room and the faint scent of coffee. For a moment, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was over. But the weight in her chest reminded her otherwise. The danger hadn't left. They had only survived another night. She dressed slowly, each movement deliberate, trying to steady the racing thoughts swirling in her mind. Cain was in the kitchen, his silhouette sharp against the window. He looked different in the soft light, less like a mercenary and more like a man who carried the world's burdens alone. He glanced over when she entered, eyes dark but warm. "Morning." "Morning," she replied, forcing a smile. The silence between them stretched, thick with unsaid words. Finally, Cain spoke, his voice low. "There's something I need to tell you." Isabella's heart skipped. What is it? He took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. My past? It's not just dangerous. It's a shadow that follows me everywhere, and it's about to catch up. Her eyes widened, the unease growing inside her. How bad? Cain's gaze dropped to the table. Bad enough that you might not be safe with me. She swallowed hard, fighting the panic rising in her throat. I'm already in this, Cain. I don't want to run again. He looked up, pain flashing in his eyes. I don't want to lose you. Before she could respond, the door slammed open. Jace stormed in, face grim. We've got trouble, he said. Intel says the group hunting Isabella is closer than we thought. They've found her location. Cain's jaw clenched. We move now. Isabella grabbed her coat, but Cain stopped her with a gentle hand. Stay close, no matter what. As they stepped outside, the city buzzed obliviously around them. But for Isabella and Cain, every shadow held a threat. Every moment was a battle between fear and hope. Walking side by side, their hands brushed briefly. That touch was a lifeline, a promise that no matter the darkness, they would face it together. Chapter 7. The warehouse loomed ahead, a silent fortress against the city's chaos. Inside, dim light flickered from a single overhead bulb, casting long shadows over crates stacked like silent sentinels. Cain moved swiftly, every step purposeful, leading Isabella deeper into the space. This place is as close to safe as it gets, he said, voice steady but tinged with urgency. We'll stay here until we figure out our next move. Isabella took a deep breath, the scent of oil and metal mixing with something raw and real, fear and hope tangled tight inside her. She wanted to trust Cain, to believe in his promises. But the past whispered warnings she couldn't ignore. Cain watched her carefully, his eyes softening. I'm sorry I left before. I was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of what I am. Her heart ached at his words. We're both scared, she said quietly. But running doesn't help. He nodded, stepping closer until the space between them was charged, electric. I'm done running. The moment stretched, fragile and fierce. Cain reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered warm against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. Suddenly the silence shattered, phones vibrating, alarms blaring. Cain's face hardened. They found us. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a hidden door. Stay close, we fight together. The seconds blurred into a storm of chaos, footsteps pounding, voices shouting, gunfire ringing out. Cain moved with lethal precision, shielding Isabella as they navigated the maze of crates and shadows. She clung to him, heart pounding, every nerve alive with terror and something else, an undeniable connection, fierce and unbreakable. As they reached a narrow exit, Cain paused, his gaze locking with hers. Trust me, he whispered. Isabella nodded, feeling the strength of his promise even as danger closed in around them. Together they stepped into the night, ready to face whatever came next, because some fights were worth risking everything for. Chapter 8. The night air was sharp with tension as Cain and Isabella ducked into the cramped safe room hidden behind the warehouse's false wall. The heavy steel door clicked shut behind them, muffling the chaos outside but doing nothing to ease the pounding of their hearts. Cain leaned against the cold metal, his breath coming in shallow bursts. Isabella stood close, her fingers trembling as she tried to steady herself. Their eyes met, the weight of everything unspoken hanging between them. We can't keep running, Cain said, voice low and urgent. This is bigger than us now. Isabella nodded, swallowing hard. I know. But I'm scared, Cain. Scared you'll get hurt, or worse, that I'll lose you again. He stepped closer, the hardness in his eyes melting into something softer, more real. I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. The tension between them shifted, the protective walls they'd built beginning to crumble. Cain reached out, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. His touch was electric, sending a shiver down her spine. "I never stopped wanting you," he confessed, voice thick with emotion. "That kiss. It changed everything." Isabella's breath hitched, the memories flooding back. The warmth of his lips, the way his cold exterior had briefly melted, the pain of losing him. She swallowed her fears, stepping into his arms. "Then don't let me go." Their lips met in a desperate, passionate kiss that spoke of years lost and hope regained. It was a promise sealed in fire and vulnerability. But just as their hearts began to align, a sudden noise shattered the fragile peace. A door slammed somewhere in the building, footsteps racing toward them. Cain pulled back, eyes blazing. "Get ready. This isn't over." Isabella nodded, clutching his hand as they prepared to face whatever darkness awaited. Together. Chapter 9. The footsteps echoed louder now, pounding against the metal corridors like a storm ready to break. Cain tightened his grip on Isabella's hand, their fingers entwined like lifelines in the darkness. The cold, safe room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in as danger drew near. "Stay behind me," Cain whispered, voice steady but laced with steel. His body shifted, positioning himself as a shield between Isabella and the unknown threat. Every muscle tensed, ready to fight. Isabella's heart raced, not just from fear but from the fierce determination that bloomed inside her. She wasn't just running anymore. She was fighting. Fighting for survival, for love, for a chance to reclaim what had been stolen by years of silence and pain. A shadow flickered at the door, a dark silhouette moving fast. Cain's eyes narrowed. "On 3, he said, voice low but commanding. 1, 2. The door burst open. A masked figure lunged forward, weapon raised. Cain reacted instantly, blocking the strike with a practiced ease born of years on the edge. The clash was brutal, close and raw. Isabella's breath hitched as she watched the deadly dance unfold. His strength, his precision, his fierce protectiveness. But then a second attacker appeared from behind. Isabella screamed, frozen in place. Cain spun, catching the second threat with a powerful blow that sent the assailant crashing into crates. His eyes darted to Isabella, still trembling but unharmed. "Run," he ordered, voice urgent. She hesitated only a second before nodding, her legs carrying her toward a narrow emergency exit Cain had shown her earlier. As she reached the door, Cain's voice stopped her. "Wait." Her heart dropped. Without warning, a sharp pain exploded in her side. She gasped, stumbling forward. Cain's face contorted with anguish as he caught her before she fell. "You're hurt," he said, voice cracking. "Tell me where." She gritted her teeth, refusing to let the pain show. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Keep moving." "No," Cain insisted, scanning the wound. Blood seeped through her shirt. "We need to get help," he said, his tone firm. Isabella looked up, eyes fierce despite the pain. "If you care about me, stay here. Don't risk yourself." His jaw tightened. "You're not walking out of this alone." He lifted her carefully into his arms, every motion tender despite the urgency. She clung to him, breath hitching, every beat of her heart a reminder of how fragile and precious their time was. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft at first, then steady, washing the city in silver. Cain moved like a shadow, fast and silent, determined to keep her safe no matter the cost. As they disappeared into the night, Isabella realized something fierce and undeniable. This dangerous man, the coldest, most broken soul, had become her only hope, and she was willing to risk everything for the chance to hold on to him. Chapter 10. The sterile white walls of the emergency room glowed harshly, a stark contrast to the rain-soaked streets Cain and Isabella had just fled. Cain sat rigid in the chair beside her bed, eyes locked on the steady beep of the heart monitor. The quiet hum of machines felt loud in the small room, underscoring the tension between the two. Isabella's hand was wrapped in a soft bandage, but the pain still lingered beneath the surface. She caught Cain's gaze and gave him a weak smile, a fragile truce after the chaos. "You scared me," she said softly. Cain's expression softened for a moment, the hardened mercenary slipping away to reveal the man beneath. "I'm not good at showing it," he admitted, "but you mean everything to me." Her heart tightened, emotions swirling. "I don't want to lose you again." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear with a tenderness that made her breath hitch. "You won't." A nurse came in, checking her vitals and giving instructions. Cain listened, but barely heard, his attention anchored on Isabella. As the nurse left, Cain leaned closer. "There's something I need to tell you." Isabella's eyes searched his face. "What?" His jaw clenched. "My past. It's darker than you know. The people hunting you. They're tied to me, to mistakes I made. And I'm sorry." Tears welled in her eyes. "We're in this together, Cain, whatever comes." He took her hand, squeezing it with fierce determination. "I'll protect you, no matter what." Outside the hospital window, the rain softened to a gentle drizzle. Inside, two broken souls found a fragile hope, one that might just be strong enough to heal the wounds of the past. Chapter 11. The soft glow of the hospital room's bedside lamp cast long shadows, flickering gently across the walls. Cain sat close to Isabella, his hand still holding hers tightly, as if letting go would mean losing everything he had fought so hard to keep. Isabella's eyes searched his face, waiting for the truth she'd begged for, the secrets he'd kept buried beneath layers of ice and pain. "I owe you everything," Cain began, voice rough but steady. "And that means being honest, no more lies." She nodded, her breath catching, bracing herself for what was coming. "My past isn't clean," he confessed. "I was part of a dangerous world, one I thought I could leave behind. But the shadows never let go. The people after you now? They're tied to that past. They want to hurt me through you." Isabella's heart clenched, but she forced the words out. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Cain's eyes darkened with regret. "I was afraid. Afraid you'd leave. Afraid you'd get caught in the crossfire." She squeezed his hand, warmth and strength flowing between them. "You can't protect me by hiding the truth." He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "I'm done running, hiding. If you'll have me, I want to face it all. With you." Tears threatened, but Isabella smiled through them. "I'm not going anywhere." Cain's gaze softened, his usual steel replaced by something vulnerable and real. "You're the reason I'm still fighting. The reason I want a future." Outside, rain whispered against the window pane, a quiet symphony to the fragile hope blooming between them. In that small hospital room, two broken souls chose trust over fear, ready to build a love fierce enough to conquer even the darkest shadows. Chapter 12. The first light of dawn crept through the hospital window, painting the sterile room in soft gold. Isabella stirred awake, the remnants of sleep slowly dissolving as she blinked against the gentle brightness. Cain was still there, seated beside her bed, his hand wrapped protectively around hers. The exhaustion on his face mirrored her own, but there was an unspoken promise in his gaze, a vow that neither of them would face the coming storm alone. She took a shaky breath, her fingers tightening around his. "Morning," she whispered. Cain smiled, a rare softness touching his lips. "Morning. How are you feeling?" Isabella shifted slightly, aware of the tenderness still radiating from her injured side. "Better, thanks to you." He shook his head, his eyes darkening with concern. "You shouldn't have taken that risk. I should have protected you better." She reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from his forehead. "You did your best. That's all anyone could ask for." Cain's jaw clenched. "There's more coming. I don't know how much time we have before they strike again." The weight of his words settled between them like a storm cloud. She looked away, her heart pounding, not just from fear, but from the realization that their lives were tangled in something far bigger than either had imagined. Cain's voice softened. "I've arranged for a secure location, somewhere no one will find us. But it means leaving everything behind, Our home, our lives, even the people we care about. Isabella nodded slowly, understanding the sacrifice. I'm ready. I want to face whatever comes. With you. He studied her face, searching for any sign of hesitation, but finding only fierce determination. Good. Because I'm done running, Isabella. I'm done hiding. This ends now. A sudden knock at the door jolted them both. Cain rose immediately, moving with the silent precision of a man trained for danger. The door opened to reveal Jace, his expression grim. Time to move, Jace said. We've got a narrow window before they make their next move. Cain nodded, signaling Isabella to gather her things. As she stood, the ache in her side reminded her how fragile this moment was. But with Cain beside her, that fragility transformed into strength. They slipped out into the corridor, the sterile hospital smells replaced by the chill morning air. Outside, a sleek black SUV waited, engine humming softly in the quiet street. Cain opened the door for Isabella, helping her inside with gentle care. As the vehicle pulled away, she pressed her hand against the cool glass, watching the city recede into the distance. The world they knew was changing, but for the first time she felt like she had a fighting chance. Inside the SUV, Cain's eyes never left the road, but his thoughts were miles away, haunted by the ghosts of his past and the fierce hope kindling in his heart. Isabella reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. We'll get through this, she whispered. He squeezed her hand back, voice low but certain. Together. Hours later, they arrived at the safe house, a secluded cabin nestled deep in the woods, far from prying eyes and dangers of the city. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and earth, a stark contrast to the cold steel and concrete they'd left behind. Inside, the cabin was simple but warm, a small fire crackling in the hearth. Cain set down their bags and turned to Isabella, who sat quietly by the window, her eyes reflecting the fading light. We're safe here, he promised, though the tension never fully left his shoulders. For now. Isabella smiled softly. It feels like a fresh start. Cain stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, yet comforting. It has to be. For both of us. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and a growing connection neither could deny. Finally, Cain reached out, tracing a gentle line along her cheek. I'm sorry for the years lost. For the mistakes that put you in danger. Isabella leaned into his touch, her voice barely a whisper. We can't change the past, but we can build a future. He smiled, a raw, genuine smile that reached his eyes. One where you're safe, where I'm worthy of your love. She took a step closer, heart pounding. I already love you, Cain. All of you. The broken, the fierce, the vulnerable. Their lips met in a tender, searing kiss that spoke of forgiveness, hope, and the promise of tomorrow. As the firelight flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts of their past, Cain and Isabella embraced the fragile, fierce love that had brought them back from the edge. Outside, the world waited, danger lurking still. But inside the cabin, two hearts beat as one, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 13. The fire had burned down to glowing embers by the time Cain stirred from the chair where he had been keeping watch. He wasn't one for sleep. Years of being hunted had made rest feel like a luxury he could never truly afford. But tonight, no, this morning, he allowed himself to exhale, just a fraction, because Isabella was safe in the next room. Or so he thought. A soft creak reached his ears, the unmistakable sound of a floorboard under careful weight. Cain's eyes sharpened instantly. His hand found the pistol holstered under his jacket even before he rose. He moved without sound, each step measured, his body angled toward the shadows stretching down the hallway. Then, her silhouette. Cain? Isabella's voice was soft, hesitant, but tinged with the kind of alertness he recognized in himself. She was wearing one of his shirts, The sleeves rolled and falling past her hands, and she looked both disarmingly vulnerable and unshakably steady. "You should be asleep," he said quietly, lowering the gun, but not his guard. "I couldn't. I felt something." Her brows drew together, like someone was outside. Cain's instincts flared. He moved past her toward the window, parting the curtain just enough to see the faint shimmer of movement in the tree line. Two shapes, low, deliberate. Professionals. His voice was low and even. "Go to the back room, lock the door, and stay there until I come for you." She caught his arm. "I'm not hiding while you face this alone." He turned fully, his eyes like dark steel. "This isn't a debate, Isabella. If they're here for me, you are the leverage they'll use." Her grip tightened. "And if they're here for me?" For a beat, they stared at each other, the air between them thick with fear and something fiercer, determination. Cain swore under his breath, then reached into the nearby cabinet, pulling out a compact knife and pressing it into her palm. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, do not run unless I tell you." They moved together, Cain leading her to the edge of the living room, every muscle in his body taut. The faint crunch of footsteps on pine needles grew clearer. Then, a sharp knock, 3 taps, a pause, 2 taps, a code. Cain's jaw clenched. He knew that pattern. Old allies, or enemies who knew exactly how to play the part. "Cain," a voice called through the wood. "It's Jace. Open up." Cain didn't move immediately. "Prove it." The voice answered with a string of numbers and words, coordinates from a mission they'd run years ago. Cain still didn't fully relax, but he motioned Isabella to stand back and slowly unlatched the door. Jace stepped inside, his coat dusted with frost, eyes scanning the room with soldier's precision. Behind him, another man slipped in, broad-shouldered, scar along his jaw. Cain didn't know him. "You've got trouble," Jace said without preamble. "They know where you are. The group that came after you in Prague? This time they're not sending a cleanup crew, they're sending a strike team." "How long?" Cain's tone was ice. "An hour, maybe less." Isabella's voice broke through. "Then we have to move." Jace looked at her, then at Cain, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. "She's coming with us?" "She's not leaving my side," Cain said flatly. The unnamed man stepped forward, his gaze lingering a little too long on Isabella. "She'll slow us down." Cain's head turned sharply. "Watch your words." A tense silence settled before Jace stepped in. "We've got a vehicle staged at the trail's end, but we'll need to move quiet. These guys have drones, heat sensors, the works." Cain grabbed the go bags they'd kept ready since arriving, handing one to Isabella. "Stay close. No sound. No light." They slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness, the forest a shadowy maze. Frost crunched underfoot in muffled whispers. Isabella's breath fogged in the cold, her pulse hammering as she kept pace behind Cain. Every rustle in the brush felt like a threat. Halfway to the ridge, the silence shattered, an electronic hum overhead, the low whirring of a drone sweeping the treetops. Cain immediately pulled Isabella down behind a fallen log, covering her body with his own. The drone's searchlight sliced through the darkness, a narrow beam skimming dangerously close. She could feel his heartbeat against her back, steady but quick, the only anchor in the chaos. When the beam passed, Cain signaled Jace and they moved again. Faster this time, the urgency pressing against their ribs. They reached the clearing where the vehicle waited, a matte black SUV with reinforced panels. Jace slid into the driver's seat. Cain ushered Isabella into the back and the stranger took the passenger side. The moment the doors shut, Jace gunned the engine. The SUV surged forward, headlights off, tires gripping the dirt road as they sped toward the main highway. Then came the gunfire. Sharp pops in the distance, then closer, the crack of rounds slamming into the rear panel. Isabella ducked instinctively, Cain's arm shielding her head as he returned fire through the side window. The stranger in front unleashed a short burst from his rifle, the muzzle flash briefly illuminating the grim set of his jaw. "2 vehicles on our 6, Jace barked. Cain leaned out just enough to fire at the lead car's tires. One shot connected, a burst of sparks, the squeal of metal against gravel, and the vehicle skidded, colliding with its partner in a messy tangle. Silence, save for the engine's roar and Isabella's ragged breathing. When they finally hit the asphalt and merged with the faint trickle of early morning traffic, Cain's shoulders eased, slightly. Jace glanced in the rear view. "We're clear for now, but they won't stop." Cain met his gaze in the mirror. "Then neither will I." Beside him, Isabella reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was firm. "Where do we go now?" Cain's eyes softened briefly before hardening again. "Somewhere they'll never think to look." As the SUV hurtled toward the horizon, the first rays of sunrise broke across the sky, warm light spilling over the edges of a world still trying to kill them. And somewhere deep in Cain's chest, past the scars and the ice, something new had taken root. Not just survival. Hope. Chapter 14. The rain had eased to a fine mist by the time Cain eased the black SUV into the gravel drive. The safe house stood at the edge of the pines, a squat, weathered cabin, its windows glowing faintly. From the outside, it was nothing remarkable, but Cain had chosen it for exactly that reason. Quiet, remote, forgettable. "Inside," he murmured, scanning the tree line. Isabella's hood was pulled low, her damp hair clinging to her cheeks, her eyes shadowed but alert. She followed him in without a word. The cabin smelled faintly of cedar and dust. A single oil lamp flickered on the table. Cain swept through each room, gun in hand, checking locks, corners, closets. Old habit. Old paranoia. When he returned, Isabella was sitting on the edge of the couch, arms wrapped around herself. Her gaze followed him like a tether. "You look like you're waiting for something," she said softly. "I'm always waiting for something," he replied, stripping off his wet jacket and hanging it by the door. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain tapping against the roof. Then, a faint, metallic click. Cain's head snapped up. The sound hadn't come from inside the cabin. It had come from beneath it. He crossed to the far wall in 3 strides, crouched, and pressed his ear to the floorboards. There it was again, softer this time, a rhythmic series of clicks like someone cycling through a lock. "Stay here," he ordered. "Cain, Isabella, please." His voice was low, but the plea in it was unmistakable. She froze, her lips parting as if she'd never heard him ask for anything. Cain moved to the back door, slipping into the dark. The mist dampened everything, his hair, his shirt, the barrel of his gun, but it also carried sound. And he heard them now. Boots in the wet earth. 3. No. 4 sets. Too close. He ducked under the porch just as the floorboards above creaked. His eyes adjusted to the shadows, and then he saw it. A black box wired to the cabin's foundation. Not an explosive. A breach device. The kind used to override reinforced locks. Cold adrenaline knifed through him. Whoever was here hadn't stumbled on them by accident. Cain darted back inside, slamming the rear door. "We're leaving. Now." Isabella shot to her feet, startled. "What's—" He cut her off by grabbing her hand and yanking her toward the front door. But just as he twisted the handle, the lamp flickered, died. Darkness swallowed the cabin. "Cain." Isabella's voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. He shifted so his body shielded hers, his voice a low growl against her ear. "They've cut the power, which means they're already inside the perimeter." Something shifted in the shadows beyond the window. A silhouette. Broad shoulders, a glint of metal in hand. Cain didn't hesitate. He kicked the couch over, sending it crashing onto its side. "Down," he ordered, shoving Isabella behind it. The sound of breaking glass followed, jagged and sharp, and a boot landed heavily on the floorboards. One intruder, then another, then a third. The air inside the cabin thickened with the scent of damp leather and gun oil. Cain's finger tightened on the trigger. Too many to take quietly. Isabella's hand caught his wrist, her nails digging in. Her eyes were wide, pleading, but not for herself. "Don't get yourself killed," she whispered. Cain almost smiled. Almost. "That's the one thing I can't promise you." And then he moved, a flash of muscle and steel, the cabin erupting in chaos. Chapter 15. Gunfire shattered the stillness, deafening in the small cabin. Splinters flew from the walls as Cain fired back, each shot precise, measured. One man went down with a choked cry. Another lunged toward the overturned couch, only to have Cain's boot slam into his chest, sending him sprawling. Isabella pressed herself lower, her breath ragged. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled her lungs. She wanted to help, wanted to do something, but Cain moved like a storm, all lethal efficiency, leaving her barely a second to think. A shadow loomed over the couch. Before she could scream, Cain was there, yanking the attacker's wrist and twisting until the man's gun clattered to the floor. The thud of a fist meeting flesh followed, then silence. "Isabella, up!" Cain barked. She scrambled over the couch, her heart pounding in her throat. Cain's hand closed around hers again, iron strong, unyielding, and they bolted for the rear door. But the moment Cain flung it open, heat slammed into them. Flames licked up the porch railing, eating through the wood. Smoke curled into the night, thick and black. "They set it on fire?" she gasped. "They want to drive us out into the open," Cain growled, scanning the tree line. His gaze cut left, then right, calculating. Not happening. He pulled her toward the kitchen. "Back window, now." Isabella didn't argue. Her fingers fumbled with the latch before Cain smashed the glass with his elbow. Shards glittered in the moonlight as he lifted her through, his hands steady despite the chaos. The damp earth greeted her knees. She landed in the shadows behind the cabin, the smell of wet pine mixing with smoke. Cain followed, sliding through the narrow opening just as a fresh volley of gunfire erupted from the front. "They think we're still in there," he murmured. "Then let's keep it that way," she said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. Cain's eyes flicked to her, dark, unreadable, and for a heartbeat something passed between them. Not just urgency, trust. He motioned her forward, keeping low. The forest was thick here, roots twisting through the soil, branches clawing at their clothes. Every step was a gamble. The crunch of a twig could give them away, but Cain seemed to know exactly where to place his feet. She mirrored him as best she could. Shouts erupted from the cabin. The attackers had realized their prey was gone. Boots pounded against the wet ground, the sound growing closer. Cain stopped abruptly, his arm shooting out to block her path. He tilted his head toward a narrow depression in the earth, a dry creek bed cloaked in shadow. Without hesitation, he dropped into it, pulling her down beside him. They crouched there, hidden by the ridge, as two men crashed through the underbrush above. Isabella could hear their labored breaths, the muttered curses in a language she didn't recognize. When the footsteps faded, Cain exhaled slowly. "We move east. There's another car stashed half a mile from here. And if they find it first," she whispered, "then we improvise." They climbed out of the creek bed and pressed on, the distant glow of the burning cabin fading behind them. The air cooled the farther they got, but the silence was heavier now, broken only by the occasional call of a night bird. Isabella's legs burned, but she didn't complain. She could feel Cain's tension like a wire stretched too tight. He wasn't just trying to escape, he was thinking ahead, anticipating the next move. Finally, the silhouette of an old barn emerged through the mist. Cain approached cautiously, scanning for movement before signaling her inside. The barn was empty save for a rusted motorcycle leaning against a post. Cain checked the fuel, then glanced at her. "It's loud, but it's fast. Hold on to me and don't let go." Isabella managed a faint smile despite the adrenaline still surging through her. I wasn't planning on letting go. His jaw tightened. Whether from the danger or the meaning in her words, she couldn't tell. But when she climbed onto the bike behind him, her arms wrapping firmly around his waist, she felt the slightest shift in him. Not just readiness for the fight ahead. Something else. Something he'd been holding back for far too long. Chapter 16. The motorcycle roared to life, shattering the quiet. Cain eased it out of the barn, keeping the headlight off, relying on moonlight and instinct to guide them. The cold wind bit at Isabella's cheeks, carrying the lingering scent of smoke from the burning cabin. Her arms tightened around his waist, not just for balance, but because the thought of losing him now sent a sharp ache through her chest. Cain's body was tense beneath her hold, his muscles shifting with every movement. His focus was razor-sharp, scanning the winding forest path ahead. Yet she could feel the pounding rhythm of his heart under her cheek, and she wondered if it matched her own. Behind them, the distant snarl of engines shattered the illusion of safety. Isabella's pulse spiked. "They're following." She breathed into his ear, the wind stealing her words. "I know," he replied, his voice a low rumble. He twisted the throttle, the bike surging forward. Branches whipped past, shadows racing across the path. The forest thinned, opening into a narrow gravel road. Cain took the turn hard, the tires skidding for a breathless second before gripping again. The pursuing headlights grew brighter, slicing through the night. Isabella glanced back, two black SUVs tearing after them, kicking up dust and stones. "They're gaining." "Hold on." Cain gunned the engine, weaving along the road. The bike shuddered over potholes, but he didn't slow. Each second bought them distance, yet the SUVs were relentless, engines roaring like beasts on the hunt. A flash of movement to their right caught Cain's eye, an old wooden bridge spanning a narrow river. The planks looked weathered, half rotten, but it was their only chance. "We're taking the bridge," he called. Isabella's heart lurched. "It won't hold." "It'll hold for us." They hit the bridge at speed, the planks groaning beneath the weight of the bike. For a terrifying second, Isabella felt the back wheel dip, but Cain's steady control kept them upright. The river below rushed dark and fast, carrying away the reflection of the burning sky. Behind them, tires screeched. One SUV stopped short at the bridge's edge, the other tried to follow. The wood cracked with a sharp splintering sound, sending the vehicle's front end plunging into the river. Shouts erupted as the current began to drag it downstream. Cain didn't slow until they were deep into the far side's tree cover. When he finally eased the bike to a stop, the engine ticking in the cool air, they were both breathing hard. Isabella slid off first, her legs trembling. "I thought—" She broke off, swallowing the knot in her throat. "I thought we weren't going to make it." Cain swung off the bike and stepped closer, his hand cupping the back of her neck, drawing her eyes to his. "I told you. I'm not letting anything happen to you." Her breath caught. For a moment, the world felt small. Just his voice, his touch, his eyes locking her in place. The danger was still out there, but here in this stolen second she felt anchored. "You keep saying that," she whispered. "But I need you to mean it. Past tonight." Cain's jaw worked, emotion flickering in the darkness of his gaze. "You have no idea how much I mean it." The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open inside her. She wanted to say more, to tell him that the years apart hadn't dimmed the pull between them. But headlights flared in the distance, slicing through the trees. Cain stepped back, all steel again. "We have to keep moving." She nodded, swallowing the words she couldn't yet speak. As they mounted the bike once more, she knew the chase wasn't over. Neither the one from their enemies nor the one in her heart. Chapter 17. The motorcycle coasted to a stop at the edge of a long-abandoned airfield, its cracked tarmac glowing faintly under the first threads of dawn. Cain killed the engine, scanning the horizon with that unerring instinct she'd learned to trust. "This is where we split," he said quietly. Isabella froze, sliding off the bike. "Split?" They'll come here, Cain continued, his voice low but unyielding. I can lead them away. You stay hidden in the hangar until I call. There's a safe contact who can— No. Her refusal cut through his words like a blade. Cain's gaze snapped to her, sharp and incredulous. Isabella. I'm not hiding while you face them alone. She stepped closer, her boots crunching on gravel. I've been running from danger my whole life, from you, from the truth. But I'm done running. His jaw clenched, that storm she knew so well brewing behind his eyes. This isn't about pride. It's about keeping you alive. And you think I'd survive losing you? The words slipped out before she could stop them, raw and trembling. For a heartbeat, Cain looked shaken, like the armor he'd built over years was finally showing a crack. You don't understand what's coming, he murmured. Then make me understand. Her voice steadied, iron beneath the softness. I know you've been protecting me from more than bullets. You've been protecting me from you. But Cain— She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of a life without you in it. Something shifted in his expression, like a locked door easing open. His fingers tightened around hers, his breath uneven. They'll kill me before they ever let you stay with me, he said finally, the confession tearing out of him. Every man I've taken down left a trail of enemies. They know you're my weakness. Then we fight together. She didn't blink. You taught me how to survive, how to read danger. Use me. Let me be your partner instead of your shadow. Cain's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked away, as if weighing a lifetime of instincts against the single person standing in front of him. The silence stretched, filled with the distant hum of insects and the slow warming of the morning air. Finally, he exhaled, the sound almost a surrender. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. She stepped into his space until there was barely an inch between them. I'm asking you to stop deciding my future for me. I'm asking you to choose us. Cain's eyes closed briefly, as if bracing himself against the flood of emotions he'd kept buried. When they opened again, the coldness she'd fought for days was gone, replaced by something fierce and unguarded. You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear you say that. His voice was hoarse, the vulnerability there almost painful to hear. Her chest tightened. She lifted her free hand to his face, her fingers brushing the stubble along his jaw. Then don't waste another second pretending you don't. For the first time in years, Cain let her see the truth. Every ounce of longing, fear, and devotion laid bare in his gaze. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it knowing there's no turning back. You'll be a target for the rest of your life. She smiled faintly, though her eyes were damp. As long as I'm your target too, I'll be fine. The corner of his mouth lifted, a shadow of a smirk she remembered from long ago. And just like that, the decision was made. Cain drew her against him, his forehead resting against hers, the heat of his breath mingling with hers. All right, Isabella, we fight together. Chapter 18. The hangar smelled of rust and dust, the air heavy with the weight of years gone silent. Sunlight poured in through broken panels in the roof, cutting the shadows into jagged strips. Cain's eyes swept the space in sharp, practiced movements, mapping every vantage point, every possible line of attack. Isabella stayed close, mirroring his pace, not hiding behind him this time, but scanning her own angles like he'd taught her. He caught her doing it and gave a subtle nod. No words, but it was the first flicker of respect he'd allowed to show openly. They'll come in hard, he said, his voice low but edged with certainty. 2, maybe 3 teams. The first will try to flush us out. The second will come to kill. Then we make sure the first team doesn't get the chance, she replied, checking the safety on the pistol he'd given her. The weight of it in her hand was no longer foreign. Cain moved to a stack of old fuel barrels, tearing a strip of cloth from his shirt to rig a makeshift Molotov. Isabella's pulse quickened. not from fear, but from the strange, electric calm settling over her. She belonged here. They heard it at the same time, the distant grind of tires on gravel. Cain's gaze flicked to hers. It's starting. He positioned her near the corner of the hangar with a clear line of sight to the entrance. Aim for center mass, he instructed. Don't hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed. Neither of us is dying today, she said, steady and sure. The first black SUV screeched to a stop outside. Doors slammed. Heavy boots hit the ground. Cain moved like a shadow, slipping into the blind spot near the hangar doors. Isabella's finger tightened on the trigger. The first man through barely had time to raise his weapon before a deafening crack split the air. Cain's shot dropped him instantly. Isabella fired next, her bullet catching another attacker in the shoulder, sending him stumbling back out into the blinding daylight. Chaos exploded. Shouts, gunfire, the acrid tang of smoke as Cain's Molotov ignited the barrels, forcing the rest of the team to scatter. Move, Cain barked, and Isabella was already in motion, following his cover-to-cover sprint deeper into the hangar. Bullets tore through sheet metal, sending sparks raining down. She ducked behind a rusted forklift, heart pounding, but there was no fear now, only focus. She saw movement through the haze and squeezed the trigger. Another man went down, his rifle clattering to the floor. Cain vaulted over debris, firing with precision that was almost unnerving. When his clip ran empty, Isabella was there, tossing him a spare without needing to be asked. Their movements were seamless, like a language only the two of them spoke. The second SUV's occupants rushed in, but the smoke from the fire made them reckless. Cain caught one in a chokehold, using him as a shield while he fired at the others. Isabella flanked them, forcing their retreat. Within minutes, the hangar was a graveyard of groans and retreating footsteps. The survivors fled to their vehicles, tires spinning wildly as they tore back down the road. Silence fell, thick and heavy, broken only by the crackle of fire. Cain's chest rose and fell, sweat glistening on his brow. He turned to her, and for once there was no coldness, no guarded edge, only pride. You held your ground, he said, almost like he didn't quite believe it himself. She gave a small, breathless laugh. We held our ground. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Cain stepped closer, his hand brushing the hair from her face, his gaze lingering like he was memorizing her. You were right, he murmured. We're stronger together. The firelight flickered in his eyes, and in that space between breaths, the war outside seemed distant. Chapter 19. The fire in the hangar had burned itself into a low, smoldering glow. The air was still hot, tasting faintly of smoke and adrenaline. Cain stood by the broken doorway, scanning the road for any sign of return, but the horizon was empty. Isabella came to stand beside him, her hand brushing his arm. It's over, for now. He exhaled slowly, though the tension in his shoulders didn't fully leave. They'll try again. Men like that, they don't quit. She tilted her head, studying him. His jaw was tight, eyes still flicking to every movement in the distance. She knew that look. It was the same one he wore when he'd first found her again, all walls and sharp edges. But now, there was something else there, something he'd been fighting just as hard as the men outside. Cain, she said softly, forcing him to meet her gaze. Look at me. He did. And in the space between their eyes, the battlefield faded away. You've been holding everything in so long you don't even know what it's like to stop, she whispered. You don't have to be the weapon all the time. For a moment he didn't move. Then, like a dam giving way, his hands came up, cupping her face as though she were the only thing keeping him grounded. You think I don't want this? His voice was rough, almost desperate. You think I haven't thought about you every single day since you walked away? Her throat tightened. I didn't walk away, Cain. I ran because I thought I was protecting you. I thought, if I stayed, I'd be the one to break you. He shook his head. You were the only thing that could have saved me. And then he kissed her, not the tentative, haunted brush of lips from the past, but something fierce and unrestrained, the kind of kiss that said there would be no more running, no more hiding from the pull between them. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, holding him close as the heat between them swelled, not from the fire nearby, but from the years of words left unsaid. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, his breath uneven. I can't lose you, Isabella. Not now. Not ever. You won't, she said, her voice steady. We face whatever comes next together. No more pushing me away. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, almost disbelieving. Together. He tested the word, as though it were both foreign and familiar. They lingered in the moment, the distant crackle of fire the only sound between them. Then Cain took her hand and led her outside into the cool night air. The road ahead stretched into darkness, but for the first time, it didn't feel like an endless battle. It felt like a path they'd walk side by side. Behind them, the hangar collapsed inward, sparks floating into the sky like scattered stars. Cain didn't look back. Neither did Isabella, because whatever ghosts trailed them, whatever enemies waited in the shadows, they were no longer fighting alone. And in that silent vow, sealed by the lingering warmth of his hand in hers, their love became something unshakable. Epilogue. The city had a different heartbeat at dawn. Golden light spilled over rooftops, chasing away the lingering mist. Somewhere far below the penthouse balcony, life was already stirring, honking horns, the aroma of street vendors starting their day, the low hum of traffic. Isabella leaned against the railing, a steaming mug of coffee warming her hands. She wore one of Cain's shirts, the sleeves hanging past her fingertips, and for the first time in years, her chest felt unburdened. Behind her, she heard the quiet shift of footsteps. His footsteps. Cain wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her into the solid comfort of his chest. The scars along his forearms were warm against her skin. His voice was a low rumble against her ear. Didn't think you were the sunrise type, he murmured. She smiled faintly, leaning back into him. I'm not, but I wanted to see the start of our first day without running. He kissed her temple, his lips lingering there like he was memorizing the moment. We'll still have to fight. They won't stop because I tell them to. I know, she said softly, but this time, you won't fight alone. For a moment, they just stood there, watching the sun crest the skyline. A new day, a clean slate. But then, down on the street far below, a black SUV slowed as it passed the building. Cain's eyes narrowed, tracking it until it disappeared into traffic. Cain? Isabella asked, feeling the sudden shift in his body. He pressed a kiss to her hair and forced a small, reassuring smile. It's nothing. But as his gaze lingered on the horizon, she saw it. The part of him that would never stop watching for shadows. And she understood. Their story wasn't ending. It was just moving into its next chapter. Because love wasn't the absence of danger. It was the choice to stand together in spite of it. Cain's hand tightened around hers. And somewhere in the depths of the city, unseen eyes were already watching.
Thank you for listening till the end. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe.